Hey everybody, this is going to be a quick overview of the Sony A7III. This is available for checkout in the equipment room, and so I want to give you guys a quick tutorial on some top features to get the most out of this camera. So the first thing you'll notice is this is obviously a Sony camera. So that means it has an E mount. So it's an interchangeable lens camera, so you can put different lenses on this camera, but it is an E mount, not an EF mount. The EF mount, that's for Canon. So if you want to check out one of the Canon lenses and put it on this Sony camera, you just need to check out the adapter as well. Don't forget to do that. You'll also notice that this is a full frame sensor. So you can see that sensor as it catches the light. That means you're going to get a really shallow depth of field and can really add some cinematic look to your shots. Another thing about this camera is it has internal image stabilization. So as you jiggle the camera around, the camera, using its accelerometers and gyroscopes, tries and keeps that sensor in one spot. So even on a lens that doesn't have built-in stabilization, this camera kind of can help you out a little bit there, which is pretty cool. Another one of the top features. So just kind of overall physical dimensions of this camera. It's very comfortable in the hand. You'll notice that there's these two scroll wheels, one in the back here and one in the front. These can be used to control aperture and shutter, depending on which mode you're in. So just kind of a quick way to access those. The other thing I want to point out on top is this dial. So this dial has a bunch of different modes on it. Right now I just have it set to auto, but if you're using this to film video, I do not recommend using auto. You can see that there's actually a special video mode right here. So that's the one you need to be in if you're going to shoot video. It's easy to just pick up this camera because as soon as you turn it on, you see an image. But if you're not in the video mode, you're going to lose a couple of those features that are only accessible in that setting. Along the back here, you can see this nice display. You can see as I turn it on, this display turns on, gives me all kinds of information. I have this scroll wheel, which I can manipulate things with. I have a menu button right up here, which you'll use to access the menus on this. You also have this button down here. I just don't have an accessible card in here right now, but if you hit that, that's how you can review your footage. So that's something that you'll want to use a lot. Okay, now let's dive into the menu on this camera and see how we can get the most out of it. Okay, so now we're going to dive into the menus on this camera and go through a few of the features that'll help you maximize your use of this camera. So you can see I just have this camera plugged in via HDMI to a monitor, and that's what you're seeing on your screen, you can see as I move around. So along the bottom right there, you see we have our shutter, we have our aperture, and we have our ISO. Should be pretty familiar to you. You can see as we move up, we have the picture profile, which we'll get into in a minute. We have face auto detect, which is a very handy feature of this camera. That AFC, that means it's autofocus in continuous mode. You can do just one-off autofocus on here, but personally I like to leave it in continuous because it is pretty good. You can see we have our clue in the top right there, just to the left of the battery. We're shooting in HD at 60 frames per second. So I know that when I pick this camera up and I look at it, I see, okay, I'm shooting 1080-60. That means I can slow it down in post-production if I need to. And it just gives you, I like that it gives you that information just right there on the screen. As we move down the right-hand side, the one just below the battery, that's for the exposure metering. You can see we're on auto white balance. This camera does pretty good with white balance, but we'll get into how to set it manually, which I think is sometimes preferable. Some more picture profile stuff below that. So I guess the main things I want you to pay attention to are the bottom row with the shutter, ISO, and the aperture, the picture profile, and then the video codec up in the upper right, just to the left of the battery. So how do we change all that? So first I want you to look in the very upper left. You see that little film strip with the M on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit this function button on the back of the camera, and it's going to bring up this little quick menu. So you can see right in here, we can change a lot. I love using this menu, this button, because it allows you to change some of the things that you want to change quite a bit just with the push of one button instead of diving into the menus, which can get pretty deep. So you're going to hit the function button, and then if I look here in the lower right-hand side, it says exposure mode. So right now I'm in M for manual. If I wanted to do a shutter priority video filming, or aperture priority video filming, or I can even do a program auto if I really wanted to. I would recommend staying off of program auto because we know what we're doing, and I always like to control the camera instead of it trying to think that it's smarter than me and trying to do things that might not give me the best exposure or the best shot that I want. So personally, I always like to be in manual. So I'd recommend that's where you try and get to. If you're not there yet though, I would say go with shutter priority. Shutter priority locks in the shutter at a certain speed and then adjusts the ISO and aperture accordingly. But for this demonstration, we're going to go to manual. We're going to keep it in manual. So now you can see that as I spin this front dial, I can change my aperture. And if I spin this back dial, it's changing my shutter speed. So this one, the shutter speed can go really slow. We're down to one quarter of a second. So you can see how slow that shutter speed is. Maybe cool for creative use in a music video or something. And then the shutter also goes way up to 1/8,000th. So you know, you can really freeze some action if you're trying to do that. So again, I'm just spinning these front and back dials. So I'm gonna get this back down to, so we're shooting in 60 frames per second, so I want my shutter speed to be as close to 1/120th as possible. And then I'll adjust my aperture accordingly. The native ISO on this sensor, which means the ISO or the gain where this sensor gets the most dynamic range, is 800. But you can see right now it's telling me that I'm a little bit underexposed. And if we look at our waveform on that monitor, you'll see that I am as well. So I'm just gonna hit the right button on the little keypad in the back, and I'm gonna spin my aperture, or spin my ISO up just a little bit. And then I'm gonna hit OK. And you can see now it's giving us a 0, you know, we're exposed much better. Okay, so let's go back to that quick menu. So I'm gonna hit that little function button again. So again, to change your exposure mode, it's that one in the lower right. The next one I wanna show you is your white balance. So I'm gonna go over to where it says AWB, so that stands for auto white balance. We're just gonna scroll through this menu. So we have auto white balance, which again, like I said, it does pretty well, but I always like to be in control of the camera instead of the camera being in control of me. So I'm gonna scroll down here. So we have daylight, we have shade, we have cloudy, incandescent, fluorescent. There are a ton of options here. You can have some underwater auto options as well. What I love to do is this color temperature or filter. So this lets you dial in an exact Kelvin temperature for your white balance. So how these menus work, up and down scrolls up and down, and then left and right kind of goes into that menu. So I'm gonna hit right, and then now you can see that I can adjust this all the way up to 9,000 Kelvin, and then all the way down as well. So, and again, if you guys remember that the 3,000s to 4,000s are more like tungsten range, and then as you go up from there, it gets into daylight range. So what's nice about this is if you set your lights to a certain Kelvin temperature, you can dial in your camera to be exactly the same as those, so everything's a perfect white balance. I like to do that as well. So for this, I'm gonna set it to 4200 because I think that's what we're at here in the studio. So now you can see that little 4200 on the right-hand side. So again, visually, I know, okay, I'm at 4200 Kelvin. Now, if I were to take this camera and go outside, I would need to adjust that. So just please keep that in mind. But again, just a quick visual way to see what's going on. An easy way to get rid of all that, if you're like, okay, I know what I'm doing, now I'm ready to film my shot, you can tap the upper button on the keypad in the back, and it gets rid of all that stuff on the side. So you still have your, access to your aperture and shutter and ISO, but now all the other stuff is gone, so it's a little bit easier to focus on your shot. I'm going to bring all that back for us though. You can see you also have this in between phase here with the histogram and audio meters. I actually do use this one quite a bit because I get a sense of my contrast in my image, as well as at least I see that I'm getting audio. So again, that's just with the top button on the little pad on the back that says display. Also has a built-in level, which is cool. So if you're going for some Dutch angles, you can see exactly how off you are. But for especially like when you're doing an interview, use that level to make sure your tripod is dead straight. And then so now we're back here. So now let's go over how to change what type of video you're getting. So what I want you to look at is the XAVC S HD 60p. So say we want to shoot in 4K. This camera does shoot in 4K. We're going to go to Menu, and you can see that when I go, the menu is kind of in pages and then pages under pages. So right now I'm up at the very top and I'm kind of scrolling through these large pages, but you can see there's a lot of sub-menus underneath each one. You can tell from that 1 out of 9, or this first one, there's 1 out of 14. So what I want you to do is go up to the top and go right, and you can just kind of keep on flipping through all of these different options. Again, you can look up YouTube videos on all of these options, but I just want to go over some quick ones with you. So in the second one, that's where it's more focused on the video settings. So you can see now I'm in page 2 up top there, and on my exposure mode, I have manual exposure like we saw earlier, but under file format, I want to go to XAVCS 4K. So if you're going to shoot in HD, shoot in XAVCS. If you're going to shoot in 4K, you only have one option, XAVCS 4K. So it's just going to shift just a little bit here. So now you can see, unfortunately, my external monitoring options change a little bit, but now I am shooting in 4K. So that's how you do that. Now I'm going to drop this back down to HD so we can see what's going on. So under record setting, you have all kinds of different frame rates. So again, now we're in HD, we can shoot up to HD in 120 frames per second, which is pretty cool, right? So what's cool about this version of 120p is it also records audio. So if you need to use that audio in your post-production, you can do that. So I'm gonna go back up to the top here. So we have 1080 60p at 50 megabits per second, at 25 megabits per second, up 30p, and 24p. So again, this is totally dependent on what you're filming, right? Whenever I shoot an interview, I switch to 24p because I know I'm not gonna slow it down. That just looks weird. So interviews in 24p. If you're shooting some fast action, that's where I like to go to 60p or the 120p. So this camera is pretty robust that way. So again, how did we get there? We hit menu, we went to page 2 up here, and then we went down to file format and record setting. Okay, so we've gone over how to turn on and off the display, the different display modes. We've gone over that little quick menu. We've gone over how to change your file format, change your white balance. Now I want to talk about how do you change your picture profile. So in some of the higher end production classes, you might have an assignment where you're asked to shoot in S-Log or in a log file format. We could do a whole separate video about what log is, but essentially it records your video in a very flat, very desaturated, very low contrast way so that in post-production you can add that contrast and really dial in a color grade. It's a very flexible way to shoot video. So on our menu, you can see in the lower left where it says picture profile off, you can see we're just shooting in regular Sony colors. But we're gonna change that right now. So we're gonna go to page 1 and we're gonna go to page 12 within the larger, well, let's call them chapters. We'll call them chapters up top and then pages in between. So you can see we're 12 out of 14 on here. And if I go to the bottom, here's picture profile. Right now it's set to off, like we saw back in on our setting, right? It says PP off, picture profile off. if I hit the menu button, now we get all these different picture profiles. And you can see as I flip through them, things are changing a little bit. So you can flip through these. Now, so for the S-Logs, so there's S-Log2 and S-Log3. S-Log2 is under picture profile 7. You can see that in the gamma curve. And then picture profile 3 is an S-Log3 gamma curve. So picture profile 7 and picture profile 8 are your S-Log2 and S-Log3 picture profile settings. So again, log footage can be kind of tricky to film with, and it's going to require post-production. One of the picture profiles I like to film in so that I get a little bit less contrast, so I have a little bit more flexibility in post-production, but not quite as labor-intensive as an S-Log, is picture profile 5, and it's the Cine 4 gamma curve. So the Cine 4 gamma curve just takes a little bit of that contrast out, a little bit of the saturation out, and in my opinion, gives you just a little bit of flexibility in post, but also a pretty good image right out of the camera. So we're just gonna keep picture profile off for now. But again, if you wanted to activate one of these, you go down and then right, and you can customize all those different things in there as well. So as soon as you punch the middle button, then now my clue is in the bottom left. Now it says picture profile 5. Another cool thing about this camera is it can shoot slow-mo in camera so that when you play it back, it's already slow-mo. So when you bring it into Premiere or whatever editing software you use, it's already slowed down, which is pretty cool. So how you get to that is you spin the dial to the S and Q setting on top. So again, if you're in that, just like that regular film mode, and even if you switch to 120p, like we saw, then it's going to film it and you're going to get audio, but it won't be slowed down automatically when you play it back. Now when we're in S and Q mode, it will do that for us. So our clues on here, so you can see right off the bat, we see that the little microphone says off. That means we're not recording sound, so keep that in mind. A common mistake is to leave it in S and Q mode when you're filming something else where you maybe want that really good nat sound, and then you bring it into post-production and you actually don't have any sound. So again, look for that microphone for sound off. Right above that, you see where it says 120 FPS. So if I were to record a clip here, you're going to see that when I play it back, it's going to play back in slow motion. So I'm just going to grab this and I'm just going to do something kind of fast. So I'm going to hit record. And then I'm just going to kind of move my hands around, maybe flip this for a second. Okay, so now I'm going to hit my playback button on the back here, and I'm going to punch the middle button, and now it's going to play. And you can see it looks like time is standing still, but you can see it's already slow-mo. So sometimes I like to shoot this way because in Premiere, I just bring the clips in and it's already slow-mo. I know exactly what I'm getting. And if this isn't the artsiest lens cap spin you've ever seen, then I don't know what you're talking about. So you can see, so that's a pretty cool way to get a quick slow-mo clip. But what's cool about this is it also can do a time-lapse kind of thing. So I'm going to hit Menu. We're going to go up to Chapter 2, and we're going to go down to S and Q settings. So in here, so I'm going to keep my record setting on 24p, but instead of my frame rate being 120, I'm going to go down to 1. So this is going to be 1 frame per second it's going to record at. And it kind of gives you a little clue down there at the bottom where it says times 24 quick motion, which is cool. So I'm 24p, 1 frame per second. I'm going to go back. So now, where before it said 120p or 120, now it just says 1. So let's do another clip. So I'm going to record. I'm going to do my hands like this. You can see it's very delayed, right? You can see in real time I'm doing like this, but on the camera I'm doing that. Now I'm going to do the lens cap spin. And I'm actually going to do it again just so we have a little bit longer clip. So you can see it's basically just taking freeze frames 1 per second. So this could be a way, this is a cool way to do a quick time lapse of sunrise, sunset. Again, you can't specify exact intervals like you can on some other cameras, but this is a quick way to do it. So I'm going to hit record to stop recording, again hit my playback, And now let's watch this. It's gonna go fast, so get ready. So that's it. The last thing I want to talk about with this camera is that this camera can also take really great photos. Again, it's a full frame sensor, it's 24 megapixels, so you can take photos and blow them up pretty big. So we're gonna get out of the S&Q and the film modes, and we're just gonna go to, why don't we just go to the M? We'll just go to the M on top, which stands for, it's a manual exposure. And so now you can see I can adjust my my aperture, my shutter, my ISO, and I'm going to take photos now, which is different than what we've seen with video. So I'm going to switch this lens to autofocus, take a couple pictures, and then again I hit my playback, and here's my photos. I know they're riveting, but trust me, this thing does take really great photos. If you hit left on the toggle switch on the back, you can actually change continuous shooting to really high. Listen to this thing. So if you're trying to capture sports, you can get some great freeze frames from this. You can also set a timer. You can also set a custom timer, or you can just do single shooting. Personally, I like to leave it in a medium setting, so I know I can get enough pictures if I hold down, but I don't get too many, if that makes sense. So again, this is a great photo camera as well. So you can all you have to do is spin it from the video setting to the M, the S, the A, or the P, or if you want, you could just set this in full auto for photos, and it's going to give you some great photos. You can see that face detect is on. Another thing to note is picture profiles do carry over to pictures as well. So if you're shooting an S-Log video and then you start taking pictures, your pictures are also going to be an S-Log. So you want to make sure that your picture profile, again, we have that clue in the bottom left there, your picture profile is something that you want your pictures to look like as well. And you'll also notice that our white balance is the same as when we were in filming mode. So again, I'm going to hit that function button, get back to auto, and now we can start taking pictures. So anyway, so what I like to do, maybe I shoot an interview and then maybe want to take some quick pictures. I'll just quickly flip this switch over to M, take some photos, switch back to video, and then you have a great variety of media for your piece. All right, guys, well, I hope you've enjoyed this quick rundown of the A7 III. Again, great little camera available for checkout in the equipment room. Today we talked about how to change your white balance, how to change your picture profile, how to change the type of recording format that you're doing, all kinds of things. Yeah, like I said, really love this camera for the S&Q mode as well. So I hope you guys enjoy using it, and thanks for watching.